It was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. The air in the church was thick with excitement, the kind that only a wedding day could bring. The guests were seated in their fine clothes, the women sparkling in bright colored gowns, and the men in their best suits, their faces gleaming with anticipation for what was to come. In the front, the choir sang joyously, their voices harmonizing as they serenaded the couple about to become one. The gold decoration shimmered in the dim light, and the soft scent of flowers filled the air. But for Chiamaka, it was nothing like she had imagined. As she stood at the entrance of the church, ready to walk down the aisle, her stomach churned with uncertainty. A wedding gown, an exquisite piece of lace and satin, shimmered in the light. The dress fit her perfectly, hugging every curve and accentuating her shape. Her makeup was flawless, and her hair was styled in elegant curls that cascaded down her back, decorated with tiny white flowers. She was every bit the beautiful bride that anyone would expect to see on such an important day. Yet inside her, the dread gnawed at her. She turned to look at her mother, Nosy, standing beside her, her face beaming with pride. She was so proud of her daughter, her only child, the one she had raised with so much love and care, the one who was about to marry the man she thought would be her happiness forever. Ngozi clutched Chiamaka's hands, her smile wide and full of joy. But there was something in Chiamaka's eyes, a quiet fear that made her heart drop. "Are you okay, my daughter?" Ngozi asked, her voice soft but full of concern. Chiamaka nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, Mama, I'm fine. Just a little nervous." "Don't be," Ngozi said, brushing a strand of hair from Chiamaka's face. Your father and I raised you right. You're a beautiful woman, inside and out. Today is your day. You're about to marry a good man." Chiamaka wanted to believe her, but there was that sinking feeling in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite shake. Her father, Chief Odion, had passed away several years ago, but she still remembered the strength of his words, the way he had always told her to trust her heart, to never settle for less than she deserved. But in this moment, standing in front of the church with the eyes of the entire community upon her, she wasn't sure if she had trusted herself. Everything had moved so quickly. Chijioke, the man she was marrying, had been persistent. The marriage had been arranged by their families, a union of two powerful families in their village. Chijioke was handsome, tall, and successful, a man any woman would envy. He was everything that her mother had always wanted for her, a solid match, a man with status, and a good future ahead. But Chijioke was not everything he appeared to be. Chiamaka could remember the first time she met him at a family gathering. She had been younger then, and he had been nothing more than a charming smile and a few kind words. Over time, they had grown closer, but as their relationship deepened, there were cracks that began to show. Chijioke's charm was sometimes a mask. Behind it, he was controlling, distant, and insensitive to Chiamaka's needs. He spoke about her like she was a trophy, something to be admired but not truly understood. The doubts had come slowly at first. Small things, like the way he never seemed interested in her thoughts, her dreams, her ideas. Instead, he only ever spoke about himself, about how successful he was, about the way people looked up to him. And when she tried to share her concerns, he would dismiss them, saying things like, "Yatigyu, you'll get over it," or "You're being too sensitive." And still, here they were, standing on the brink of marriage. But as Chiamaka took that first step down the aisle, her heart dropped. There, at the altar, stood Chijioke. He was dressed in an immaculate black suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his shoes gleaming. His broad smile stretched across his face as he waited for her to approach, his eyes scanning her figure as though appraising her, like she was a new car, a new possession to be admired. He was everything the guests had expected: calm, poised, and dignified. But Chiamaka could see the glimmer of something in his eyes, a sharpness, a coldness that sent a wave of unease through her. As she walked closer, she tried to look past the feeling, to focus on the vows, on the love she was supposed to be feeling. But the closer she got, the heavier the air became. The guests stood as she approached, smiling and nodding. There were whispers, hushed voices filling the church. They spoke about how beautiful the bride looked, about how perfect this union was, how lucky she was to be marrying a man like Chijioke. And for a moment, Chiamaka thought she might be able to forget. Maybe it was all in her head. Maybe everything would be fine. But when she reached the altar and Chijioke took her hand, it happened. Without any warning, without any provocation, he looked her up and down, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Is this what you've become?" Chijuke's voice was low, but everyone in the church could hear him. Chimeka blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You look ugly, honestly. All this makeup and dressing up. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this." His voice was like a slap, cold and uncaring. The words echoed in the silence of the church, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Chiamaka felt her body go stiff, her hand trembling in his grip. The entire congregation fell silent. She could feel the heat of their eyes on her, could sense the shock spreading through the room. Her heart pounded in her chest. She blinked rapidly, trying to process what had just happened. She had heard him wrong, hadn't she? She had to have, but there was no mistake. His eyes, that sharp look, told her everything she needed to know. "Chijioke," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, his voice louder now, "you're not as pretty as I thought you were. You spent all this time in the mirror for nothing." The words cut through her like a knife. It felt as though the entire church had tilted on its axis, like the world was spinning around her. "Chijioke!" her mother gasped, rushing forward as the guests murmured in disbelief. "What is wrong with you? This is your bride." Chijioke didn't even look at Ngozi. His gaze remained fixed on Chamaka, now full of disdain. "I don't know what your mother was thinking. I don't know why she thought this was a good idea, but I should have known better." His voice dripped with condescension. Chiamaka's heart broke in that moment. All the years of hoping, of trying to convince herself that things would be okay, all of it fell apart in a single instant. Her face burned with embarrassment. She felt the stares of the guests piercing through her, the whispers turning into louder murmurs. Her chest tightened as tears filled her eyes. She blinked them away, not wanting to show weakness, but the sting was unbearable. "I think we need to talk, Chiamaka," Chijoke said, his tone casual, as if nothing had happened. "But not here. We'll talk at home." Chiamaka didn't know what to do. The entire church was looking at her, waiting for her to respond, for her to do something. But she couldn't find her voice. She couldn't speak. Her mother's hands gripped her tightly, pulling her away from Chijoke. "We're going home, my daughter. You're not going to stand here and let him humiliate you." The guests stood in stunned silence as Chiamaka's feet carried her, almost like a dream, through the back of the church, her mother's arms around her shoulders. She didn't know where she was going or what she was supposed to say. Her mind was a whirl of emotions: betrayal, anger, hurt, and confusion. And somewhere in the distance, she heard the faint sound of Chijoke laughing, his voice filled with self-satisfaction. Yamaka felt as though her heart had shattered, piece by piece, with every word that left Chijoke's mouth. The whole church seemed to blur around her as her mother guided her out the back entrance. The light outside, so bright and sharp against the dimness of the church, seemed too much for her to bear. Her chest felt tight as if she was suffocating under the weight of it all. The image of her groom, the man she had planned to spend her life with, calling her ugly, filled her mind like an echo, loud and unforgiving. Chiamaka, Ngozi whispered urgently, pulling her into a tight embrace. It's okay, my daughter. It's okay. But Chiamaka couldn't breathe. Her body trembled from the shock, from the unexpected cruelty that she had just experienced. The excitement that had once surrounded the wedding, the joy of marrying someone she thought would be her world, had now turned into a nightmare. Chijoke's words were still ringing in her ears, echoing louder than any sound in the church. How could he say that? How could he belittle her like that on their wedding day in front of everyone? Mama, I... Chimaka's voice cracked as she tried to speak. The tears welled up in her eyes again, but she wiped them away forcefully, not wanting to show any more weakness. I can't marry him, Mama. I can't. Ngozi's grip tightened around her, pulling her in even closer, as though she could protect her from the weight of the world crashing down around them. Don't worry, my daughter, Ngozi said softly, but her voice trembled. We'll figure this out. I'll take care of it. You don't need to go through with this. Chiamaka was still in a daze, her mind racing. She couldn't even process her own thoughts properly. How had it all gone so wrong? She had heard stories about brides being abandoned or jilted at the altar, but she never thought it would happen to her. She had thought that her wedding day would be the culmination of a fairy tale. Instead, it was the beginning of a nightmare. Just then, her phone buzzed in her purse. Chiamaka pulled it out shakily, seeing Chijoke's name flashing on the screen. Her hand hovered over the phone, indecision filling her. Her mind screamed at her to ignore it, to leave him behind and never look back. But something deep within her pulled her to answer. She had to know. She had to hear him say it, even if it broke her. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the call button. Chiamaka, Chijoke's voice came through the phone, cool and unaffected, as though nothing had happened. We need to talk. Chiamaka's grip on the phone tightened, her knuckles white. Talk? About what? About how you embarrassed me in front of everyone? How you called me ugly on our wedding day? There was silence on the other end of the line. A long, oppressive silence. I didn't mean it like that, Chijoke finally said, his tone flat, almost dismissive. It's just, you should have known better. You've always tried too hard to look like the perfect bride. It was too much. You were trying to please everyone but me. Chiamaka's chest tightened, her breath shallow. So you think I looked ugly? You think that what I did to look beautiful today, to look like the woman you wanted, was too much? I'm not saying you're ugly, Chiamaka. Chijoke's voice grew impatient. But I don't like pretending. All of this. He gestured as though he could see the dress, the makeup, the attention to detail. It's not real. It's a facade, a mask. Her heart dropped to the floor. A mask. So what do you want me to do, Chijoke? Chiamaka asked, her voice cracking. You want me to change who I am for you? To stop being who I've always been? Just to fit into your idea of what a woman should be? Don't be dramatic, Chiamaka. I'm not asking for anything extreme. Just that you stop acting like you're something you're not, he replied, as though his words were completely rational. It's about balance, you know. I just need to see you for who you really are. No more pretending. Chiamaka's grip on the phone tightened, and her body trembled with the force of the pain in her chest. She wanted to scream, to say everything that was on her mind, but all she could do was whisper, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't think I want to. Another long pause. Then Chijioke's voice came through again. Colder now. Well, you've already gone this far. You're in this with me now, whether you like it or not. We'll talk later. The call ended abruptly. Chiamaka stared at her phone, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on her. Was she trapped? Was it too late to walk away? Gozi stepped closer to her, pulling her into another tight embrace. Let him go, my daughter. You deserve someone who sees you, who values you, not someone who insults you. Chiamaka nodded silently, her tears now flowing freely. She felt her heart breaking with every sob, but part of her knew, deep down, that her mother was right. She deserved better than this. As the evening wore on, the house grew quieter. The guests had left, the festivities over, but the emptiness in Chiamaka's heart remained. She had spent the rest of the afternoon locked in her room, trying to sort through her emotions, trying to process what had happened. Her mother had been patient, but she knew that the silence between them was full of unsaid words, full of the hurt that was too fresh to express just yet. The night sky outside was thick with clouds, as though the world itself had turned dark in response to her pain. Her phone buzzed again. It was a text from Chijioke. Chijioke, let's talk. Please, don't do this. We're meant to be together. Her hand trembled as she read the message. She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to tell him everything, to let him know how much he had hurt her, how he had destroyed the happiness she once had in their future. But what could she say to someone who had just called her ugly, to someone who thought so little of her? She typed back, I can't do this anymore. It's over. With a deep breath, she hit send. The room felt suddenly colder as she waited for his reply, her heart racing in her chest. But as the minutes ticked by and the message remained unread, Chiamaka felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. It was done. It was finally over. She had taken control of her own life again. Chiamaka had always been the woman who put others' needs before her own. She had always tried to please, to make others happy. But today, she had learned that no one, especially not a man who could call her ugly on her wedding day, was worth sacrificing her happiness. The phone buzzed again, but this time it was her mother's voice that came through loud and clear. Chiamaka, my daughter, Ngozi said gently, you've done the right thing. You're not just beautiful on the outside. You're strong, and I've always known you would come through this. Let's rebuild together. After sending that final text, Chiamaka sat quietly in her room, the weight of her decision heavy on her chest. She didn't know if she had made the right choice, but she felt something deep within her, a spark of hope that had been buried for so long, smothered beneath the expectations of family, tradition, and society. She had been living for others, for the approval of those around her. But today she realized she needed to live for herself. She looked out of the window, the dark sky stretching endlessly, a mirror of her emotions. The clouds had parted, revealing a sliver of moonlight that illuminated the trees outside. She saw the shadows they cast on the ground, long and reaching, but still strong and unbroken. That's what she wanted to be, strong. She wanted to stand tall, even in the darkest of times. Chiamaka, her mother's voice broke through her thoughts. Ngozi was standing at the door, her face soft but worried, her hands clasped in front of her. Are you okay, my daughter? Chiamaka nodded, a smile playing on her lips, though her eyes still glistened with unshed tears. I'm okay, Mama. I'm just processing everything. I never imagined today would turn out like this. Ngozi stepped forward and sat beside her on the bed, her arm around Chiamaka's shoulders. I know, my dear. I know. It's hard, but you did the right thing. No one deserves to be treated like that. Not on their wedding day, not ever. You're a beautiful woman, inside and out. And anyone who doesn't see that doesn't deserve your love. Chiamaka rested her head on her mother's shoulder, feeling the warmth of her embrace. She had always been a mother's pride, and that unconditional love was something she needed now more than ever. The sting of Chijioke's words, though sharp and cruel, was slowly beginning to fade, replaced by the strength of her mother's unwavering support. I don't even know what happened, Chiamaka said, her voice small. One moment, everything seemed perfect. The next, it was like I was invisible to him, like nothing I did mattered. Ngozi's expression softened. Chijioke was never the right man for you, my daughter. You may have thought he was, but he wasn't. A good man, he doesn't tear down his partner. A good man lifts them up, cherishes them. You deserve someone who sees you for who you truly are. Chiamaka wiped away a tear and smiled. Thank you, Mama. I don't think I've ever really known what I wanted until now. I've always wanted to make everyone happy, make you happy. But I forgot about myself. I forgot about what I wanted in life. Nosy kissed her daughter's forehead. You are stronger than you know, and you will find your way. This is just the beginning, my dear. Don't rush. Take your time. For the first time in what felt like forever, Chiamaka breathed deeply. The tightness in her chest slowly started to ease. She felt the weight of the world lifting, if only a little. The days that followed was a whirlwind. Chiamaka's phone continued to buzz with messages from family members, friends, and even Chijioke. But each time, she simply ignored them. She needed space. She needed time to heal. She could hear her mother's words echoing in her mind. You deserve someone who sees you for who you truly are. It had been hard to resist the temptation to check Chijioke's messages. The man she had once dreamed of spending her life with was suddenly a stranger to her. The thought of walking away from her dreams, from the life she had envisioned, was terrifying. But Chiamaka was learning to trust herself more each day. She began to recognize the importance of self-love, something she had neglected for so long. Her friends reached out to, some in support, others in confusion, not fully understanding why she had called off the wedding. But Chiamaka was adamant. This was her life. She wasn't going to leave it based on other people's expectations. One evening, Chiamaka decided to go out for a walk. The air was warm, the sun setting behind the horizon, casting a golden glow over the streets. She hadn't felt like this in a long time. Free. She was alone with her thoughts, but for the first time in a while, they weren't filled with sadness or confusion. They were filled with hope. As she walked, she thought about what came next. What would she do with her life? She had built everything around Chijioke, and the marriage that never came to be. Now, she had to rebuild, to rediscover who she was without him. Her mind wandered to the things she used to love. Before the engagement, she had been passionate about her work, her friends, and her family. She loved reading, writing, and traveling. She had given up those things in pursuit of the dream Chijioke had sold her. She hadn't done anything for herself in so long. That night, she sat down with her journal, the same journal she hadn't written in for years, and began to write again. She wrote about her feelings, her dreams, and what she wanted for the future. She wrote about the pain of the past week, but she also wrote about her strength, about the courage she had found to walk away. As her pen scratched across the paper, Chiamaka felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Writing was always her way of processing the world, and it felt good to reclaim that part of herself. She smiled to herself as the pages filled with her thoughts. For the first time in a long time, she was truly herself, unapologetically, honestly, her own person. Weeks went by, and life started to return to normal. Chiamaka took time off from work to heal. She spent time with her mother, her friends, and most importantly, with herself. She rediscovered the hobbies she had left behind: painting, reading, and even cooking. She began to feel something she hadn't felt in years: peace. One day, as she sat in her favorite cafe, sipping a cup of tea, Chiamaka received a call. It was from Adaeze, her best friend. "Chiamaka, we need to talk." Adaeze's voice came through the phone. "I know things have been rough, but I think it's time we have a real conversation about all of this." Chiamaka sat up straight, her heart beating a little faster. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I've been hearing a lot of things from people about the wedding," Adaeze continued. "Chijioke's been telling everyone you're the one who called off the wedding, that you're crazy, that you overreacted." Chiamaka felt the anger rise in her chest. "What else did he say?" "A lot of things, honestly. He's telling people you're not his type anymore, that you were always too focused on looking perfect, but it wasn't enough for him." Chiamaka's face burned with humiliation and rage. "He has no right to say that. He's the one who called me ugly. He's the one who humiliated me." "I know," Adaeze said softly. "But here's the thing, Chiamaka. People who talk like that are projecting their own insecurities onto others. It's not your fault. You are so much more than anything he could ever understand." The words were exactly what Chiamaka needed to hear. She had been listening to everyone else for so long, living according to their expectations. But she had always known that she was capable of more. She was strong, intelligent, and beautiful, not because of the makeup or the dress, but because of who she was inside. "Thank you, Adaeze," Chiamaka whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I needed to hear that." "Of course," Adaeze said. "And remember, I'm here for you, always. No one who truly loves you would ever make you feel like that." Chiamaka smiled. "I think I'm ready now, ready to let go of the past and move on." It wasn't easy, and there were still moments when Chiamaka doubted herself. But with each passing day, the wounds from her failed marriage healed. She learned to love herself in ways she never had before. She sought counseling, took solo trips to rediscover the world on her own terms, and even began thinking about new goals for her future. One day, while sitting in the park near her house, she realized how far she had come. The sky was clear, the sun bright, and she was at peace with herself. She smiled, thinking about how much she had grown. And for the first time, she felt proud of the woman she had become. Her journey wasn't over. It had only just begun.